if your Bitcoin bet pays off, it will be cataclysmically destructive for the world. And that'll have enormous consequences to many people that we all know and care about who weren't hedged in Bitcoin. And so you almost don't want it to happen.
But you literally only can see one path to its success. You don't see any other reason for it to succeed, even in a world where not everything else comes crashing down.
Not really. I think that people could claim that it's a more frictionless payment mechanism or payment rails. I don't really buy that. I think that there are much easier to use products that eventually will become, virtual payment mechanisms that connect the world, whether it's WhatsApp or the Cash App or Venmo or WePay. All of these things will eventually be threaded together in an underlying framework that'll allow seamless money transfer, zero cost, instantaneously, in a ledger that gives you a sense of security and transparency. All of these things, I think, will eventually happen. And so the use case for Bitcoin, I think, become less and less as a product and more as an instrument. And again, then you have to think about what the underlying value of the instrument is. People try to make this case for gold all the time, that there's an industrial use for gold. And I would say maybe, but overwhelmingly, folks use it as an instrument to hedge other parts of their assets and other parts of their portfolio. Similarly, we will make the case ad infinitum for the industrial value of Bitcoin, but the overwhelming use case for the most people will be as a financial hedge. And I think that that's good enough, because that's what will get our, quote unquote, the proverbial sort of grandmother, grandfather to buy this thing, is that concept, because they can understand that much more easily than they can understand distributed ledgers and, seamless payment gateways and this and that. And it's all a little gobbledygook at some level.
Right. And out of curiosity, when you first heard about Bitcoin, did it take you a while to understand its potential? Because a lot of people say, oh, at first I dismissed it. And I wondered if you also took that path.
There's a well-known person in the Bitcoin ecosystem. His name is Wences Casares. He was the one that introduced it to me in 2010. We were actually going to Las Vegas for his 40th birthday. And that's when he pitched me on it. And I remember landing 3 days later, and I called my family office and said, buy 1 million Bitcoin. That's how I started. And it was, $80 or something at the time. And it just sounded kind of really interesting. But then it took me a few years to really understand it. I didn't totally understand all the mechanics of it. And to be honest with you, I've forgotten most of the mechanics now. I studied it at the moment. I made an underwriting decision to buy and then to never think about it again. And by and large, I've never thought about it again. I mean, I remember my family office flipped out when, Bitcoin was 20,000 a coin. They're like, and I was like, guys, don't tell me. I don't want to know. This is like, just take it off the balance sheet. Don't ever look at it. Keep it at the cost. And, don't get psychologically affected by this number. It doesn't mean anything. And then it went back down to 3,000 or something. Then they called me again. They're like, and I was like, guys, I told you, it just doesn't matter what's going on here. And so, I don't know, where it is now, 9,000, 8,000, 10,000, whatever.
9,500, I think.
Yeah, I don't, I couldn't tell you what the price is.
Well, I was curious. You did say at one point that your funds owned almost 5% of all Bitcoins. I don't believe that's the case anymore. So I was wondering what percentage of Bitcoins you own now.
I don't, to be honest, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But yeah, we were pretty aggressive buyers. I think, we were also sellers of some in the fund because I bought some in my fund as well. For myself and my LPs. I bought for myself personally. I have a bunch of coins that I gave to DCG so that they could stand up the Grayscale ETF. And so, I don't know. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with sort of, what I own. I kind of think about it as, like I said, I should be 1% hedged. And I try to track that just to make sure that that's still nominally the case.
Like meaning that you rebalance?
I haven't actually actively rebalanced. I've gotten distributions from other folks. And so when I get more, I just kind of, give it to Grayscale, quite honestly, just because I don't want to deal with the coins themselves. I'd rather just get back shares in the ETF because it's just easier for me to manage. So I don't want to have access to the Bitcoin. I just think that's a huge administrative and logistical burden I don't want to bear. At some level, it's also a security thing that I don't want to take on. So, that's Grayscale's problem, or Coinbase's problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one thing I was also going to ask you, I know you just said you don't really watch the Bitcoin markets, but did you hear about how Bitcoin also took a massive hit at the same time that panic about the coronavirus was hitting the stock market? And I wondered what that, if that affected your thesis that this was an uncorrelated hedge.
Well, I think that more reinforced that for right now, people who are day trading or speculating, they're the same people that are day trading or speculating other financial markets. And so, it'll suffer the same psychological ebbs and flows. And so, when people were selling off equities, it's because they wanted more liquidity, whether it was because of margin pressure or because that they had a directional view on the stock market. And I think that's the same thing with Bitcoin, because a lot of the day-to-day market participants are actively trading the same way they would trade any other stock or bond or commodity. And so it wasn't surprising in my mind that Bitcoin traded off when equities traded off. It just goes to show you that there is a portion of people that view it as a hedge and will never look at it. And then there's a much larger portion, to be honest, who view it as a financial instrument that you can speculate on and make money on in short-term increments. And in as much as those people are greater than or equal to the number of people who view it as a hedge, it will sort of map to other financial markets. When there's a drawdown in equities, you'll probably see a drawdown in Bitcoin. When there's a rally in equities, you'll see a rally in Bitcoin. And by and large, I suspect that that's what we've seen. And that speaks more to the short-term nature of the people in the asset class today. But that probably will change over time as well. Because again, when you get sort of like the long tail adoption of this, so that when there's, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people that own it, they will be more like me, lazy holders. They bought it for a very different reason than speculation, and they neither have the time nor the inclination to care what it does on a daily basis. And that will be very good for Bitcoin.
And one other thing is, you also said in another interview that you disagree with the narrative that Bitcoin is digital gold. And I wondered why you disagreed with that. I don't feel that that's necessarily something that's incompatible with the idea that it's an uncorrelated hedge.
Yeah, I think that when the problem is that people get very philosophically strict when they talk about gold. I think some people frankly own it because they believe that at some point we'll go back to a gold standard, or philosophically they believed so strongly in a gold standard. Other people legitimately do believe that there is some industrial use, and that there is some portion of the trading value of it that ebbs and flows based on its industrial value, which isn't not untrue. I don't think enough people necessarily view it as like a pure inflation hedge or market hedge. And so that's sort of my comment, which is that, to paint it in the brush of gold just again makes the explanation more complicated. And if you want mass market adoption, the one thing I've realized in any product, is you need true simplicity. And this is why, I would encourage people to really embrace the simplicity of what Bitcoin is, which is it's basically schmuck insurance in case the people in charge really fuck it up.
Well, I was also curious. So do you see merit in any of the other crypto assets, in particular Ethereum?
No.
And why not?
It's kind of like when you have a bellwether instrument, the gains typically go to the winner. So I'll use an equity example to make the case. When Obamacare passed, there was going to be a clear tailwind to health insurance. And, you could have bought a basket of health insurers, or you could have just bought United Healthcare. And the basket would have performed okay. United Healthcare 10x'd in the last 10 years. If you believed in smartphones, you could have bought a basket of things in 2010 or 2008 or 9 when the iPhone first got released. You could have bought, Nokia and Motorola and Samsung and HTC, or you could have just bought Apple. And Apple, frankly, just crushed everybody else. The point is that in any market, when there's a clear winner, it's not that these other things can't win, but there's a weird psychological effect that almost drives these second and third tier winners, which is a desire by people almost out of this sense of insecurity to not want to admit that there's a winner simply because they weren't the one to pick it first. And so what they do is they create these convoluted narratives and theses to basically anoint other winners. And yeah, can they win? Sure. But do they ever win like the category killer? No. I mean, do you really want to be long Lycos and DuckDuckGo, or did you just want to be long Google? There has been not a single market where you've been rewarded as handsomely for being long the number 2, 3, and 4 player as you are for being long the number 1 player. And again, it goes back to when things tip and go mass market, the average buyer makes the simple decision. And the simple decision is to go to the category defining winner and then set it and forget it.